It's the Infectious Groove Podcast, part of the Odd Pods Media Network. Recorded from Detroit, Michigan, and Jacksonville, Florida. The Infectious Groove Podcast is your source for jammy jams, album reviews, and the best in-depth music discussion. Thanks for joining us. Now here are your hosts.
Hello, my name is Russ, and along with me this week is Michelle. Hi, Michelle.
Hola.
That's got to be the most excited that I've had you do any sort of greeting in quite some time.
Because we're almost on break.
Oh, yeah. That's what gets you going more than anything. I feel like in this order, it being your pick for album review probably comes in at number 2, things that make you excited, and then number 1 is being on break.
Yeah.
And speaking of the great joy that it has been to do this program, this episode that you're listening to right here, right now, is our 3-year anniversary. It is now 3 years from the day where we put out the very first episode of the Infectious Groove Podcast, and I don't have it in front of me, but I think this makes this episode 160, which we did.
That's too many.
We did a series. Well, we were doing once every week, and then we, right in the middle of all the pandemic, we did a bunch of bonus episodes that was an album tournament, which if you haven't listened to, you should really go back and check out because those were a whole lot of fun. They were much, much shorter episodes, but they were a lot of fun. So there was at least, I think, 16 weeks where we doubled up on episodes. So having said that, by way of a long story, we are at episode 160. And this is going to be our look back on 3 years in the second half of the program. But before we get to that, we have stuff to handle. And this is actually because you're usually on every other episode, Michelle. This is going to be the first time in a while that there's feedback on you for you to actually hear.
I'm missing that.
Yeah, I would imagine. All right, let's get into it.
Feedback job. Don't worry about that. Right. There's rock and roll be without feedback.
Our friend Nick Macchiato writes in and says, I just finished listening to the episode and I immediately went to Dwight Yoakam, which, by the way, were my Jammy Jams, was part of my Jammy Jams last week.
I know I was there.
Yeah, okay. That would be the first time you ever remembered anything from an episode the week prior.
You know what I learned last week?
What's that?
How you spell Yoakam.
Oh, yeah, because you did you have trouble finding it on Spotify, even though I put it on the playlist for you?
So I spelled it the way I think it should be spelled, and it came up, and it was the wrong, because I'm assuming everyone spells it the wrong way. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people. So it came up, and I was like, "Oh shit! Like that's not how you spell it." And then I immediately went to check to see if you made an error,
and I did not.
You did not,
yeah,
or else I would have definitely pointed it out.
Oh yeah, I would not be finding out about that just now.
I could not have kept it to myself.
Right. Yep. Nick goes on to say, I forgot how many bangers he had until you started mentioning songs. And then I was like, oh, yeah, that song. Oh, yeah, that song, too. My grandma had a 7-inch vinyl of his with a duet of Dwight and Buck Owens doing Streets of Bakersfield. And it was one of my go-tos when I went to visit her. So that's cool. Further feedback on my Jammy Jams from last week. Seth writes in and says, okay, Literally in Hiding is in my top 5 Pearl Jam songs, if not my number 1. Wishlist is also amazing too. Literally made my day that you gave him some love, which I thought was cool. Soon after that, Nick Macchiato wrote back in and said that he got a chance to listen to the Jen Wigmore record after we reviewed it.
Yeah.
He opens up his review with, holy hell, I streamed this album tonight and Michelle did great. I have never heard of her before, but I'm digging in more. With that said, I do disagree that 24 is the least best song on the album. I love it, and I could definitely see it being a Bond film opening theme song.
Oh,
Your thoughts on that, Michelle?
I concur. I mean, it's still my meh, but
a solid meh for you.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting piece of feedback from our Instagram account. Jen Wigmore herself left us
the
a
one
comment.
and only.
The one and only. And well, we assume one and only.
That's quite a unique name. I don't know if there's any more.
Right. She said, thank you so much for listening. New album coming out this year. So I don't know if we've broken Jen Wigmore news or not, but I know neither of us knew that there was a new album coming.
No, but that's weird that we were just talking about how she had all these random one-off singles and you were like, oh, John Mayer took 3 or 4 years to put that on an album. And
right. Yeah. It makes me wonder if she might have listened to at least some of the episode because, you know, like we heavily talked about wanting a new album from her. So
it could be that, or she's just selling herself, which is fine too.
No, it could be that, but I mean, like in the post, I didn't mention like, oh, and we can't wait for a new album, or you know what I mean? So it makes me wonder if she actually might have listened. Last piece of feedback coming in, and this was on today. I just realized, and I don't know if I told you this or not, Michelle, but the day that we were recording this, like today, is the 3-year anniversary of the day we recorded the very first episode. So it's not just like
my time hop told me that this morning.
Yep. And I put that out on Twitter, and the It Rocks podcast, who we are big fans of and who we are always telling people to go listen to for new music choices, said, "Congrats, y'all. You guys were one of the first music shows that we heard when we started. You guys sounded so polished that we figured you guys were longtime pros. It's wild to think that you started only a few months before us," which I think is very, very nice, very kind words from the folks.
Yeah, the only reason we sound polished is because you know what you're doing on the, what is it called?
Audio editing, the internet, roadcaster, microphones, electronics.
All of that. Every word you just said.
I want to say that we're 3 years into the program, and I believe that's the first and only time that you complimented me. And it's so hard for you to give compliments that you tripped all over it trying to get it out.
Yeah, but now you just ruined it. It'll never happen again.
Everything he said, you just ruined it.
Yep.
All right, let's get into what we've been listening to. Our jammies. I'll go first because even though Michelle is wildly over-prepared from what I can see on the camera right now, I want to talk about how Lauren and I, watched a 3-part docuseries on Paramount Plus the other night called Sometimes When We Touch. And it is about the meteoric rise of the only thing you can describe it as is soft rock or yacht rock that came about in the late 70s all the way through the early 80s. And quick armchair review of the program. It's 3 episodes long. And in my opinion, you could watch the first and last episode. The second episode, I'm not saying that they should leave out that, that there was a downfall and a downturn, because every genre goes through that. I don't care how cool your genre is. Every genre blows up and then it goes through a period where it's down. But like the whole second episode was just like unnecessary pot shots at people, like just really like way too, I was cooler than that music the whole time. And it's like, no, you weren't. So the first episode talks about how all that music came up to be so huge. And then the third episode talks about like the big, huge comeback of that genre and how like hip hop had something to do with it because a lot of the hip hop artists were sampling all of those songs and so on and so forth. So anyways, really cool doc. But because of that, we ended up listening to just a ton of that type of stuff. So Earth, Wind, and Fire, After the Love Is Gone, which is actually going to play into the second half of the show here in a little bit. But Earth, Wind, and Fire, After the Love Is Gone, Lido Shuffle by Boss Gags. And then I think one of the groups that defines, like if a person was to say, well, what do you mean soft rock? You could just say this one word and they would know what you're talking about. The Carpenters. Superstar and We've Only Just Begun have been 2 Carpenter songs that I've just...
Why do they call it yacht rock? I don't get it.
They actually cover that in the thing.
So you're not going to spoil it?
No, it was a YouTube group, some comedy troupe made a bunch of skits about like all the writing and touring of all those songs, and they just called it yacht rock in those skits rather, and then the term just caught on.
I ain't never been on a yacht, but I've heard those songs.
Right. So anyways, a lot of that stuff, a lot of late 70s, early 80s easy rock type stuff was what I was listening to, but in particular those 4 tracks. And again, that ELO or Earth, Wind, and Fire song, rather, After Love Is Gone, is going to come back up in the second half of the program.
Spoiler.
So now, Michelle, I know that you were overly excited and really super prepared to share your jammy jams, and I just cut you off and went first. But now is your time. What have you been listening to?
There's a song from Nathaniel Rateliff's solo album. You just have the one? I don't know. I probably should have looked that up, but it's called You Should Have Seen the Other Guy. And it's been stuck in my head for like a week now. So that's been on repeat. It's very similar to the rest of Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweat stuff, but not as hard.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Not as heavy, which I don't feel like their stuff's super heavy to begin with, but it's definitely more emo, I would say.
Yeah. It's more intense, that's for sure.
Yeah. And then Matt Mason, I don't know why this single keeps coming up on Spotify. It must really want me to listen to it, but Nelson Wood Lane has been showing up everywhere this week, so that's been something that I've been listening to a lot. And Rick Ross, Hustlin', because why not? That's always my jam.
Because
I always be hustling.
I was going to say, every day you do be hustling.
Every day I be hustling so hard. So I'm going to pick those 3 songs as my jams because why not?
Yeah, and I mean, they're an eclectic group between the 3 of them, so that's good. No, that's good. It's like everything I was listening to is all basically exactly
Yacht rock.
the same type stuff. I don't know. I like soft rock more than yacht rock. Like I don't dislike the term yacht rock like I dislike the term hair metal, but like I don't know. I just think there's something like dismissive about it, and
it definitely doesn't sound serious.
Yeah. So, and I really enjoy, I think out of those groups that I mentioned earlier, like the Carpenters, I just love Karen Carpenter's voice so much. And I know I'm not breaking any ground with that. Everyone loves. Oh, Karen Carpenter's voice?
Yeah.
It's all right.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever watched any footage, by the way? I'm not being funny on this or like trying to put you on the spot, but have you ever watched any footage of her drumming like on YouTube?
I couldn't even tell you what she looks like.
All right. Well, you should go on YouTube sometime and just type in Karen Carpenter drumming, like, because everyone knows her as being like the voice of that soft rock genre. And she was like a hell of a drummer, and people don't know that.
Really?
Yeah. So there's a lot of really good footage out there. She was really something, man. She's one of the ones that I miss a great deal. And her whole story is unfortunate and tragic, but she left some gorgeous, gorgeous music for us while she was here. So anyways, and they do, and I will say in that documentary too, that sometimes when we touch, they don't really delve too far into all of that. Like they just kind of touch on the hits from each person, you know, because there was a lot of tragedy around that era too, of course. So those are our Jammy Jams. And then when we get into the second half, we're going to talk quite a bit about a bunch of different artists and whatnot that we've covered and so on. So the Spotify playlist that we have will have my Jammy Jams on it, Michelle's Jammy Jams, and then probably a smattering of these different artists that we're going to talk about in the second half of the program. Speaking of the second half of the program, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, Michelle and I are going to take a stroll down memory lane. Hopefully it's poorly lit and I have a weapon and she doesn't, so I can get her back for a lot of the things she said about me on the program over the years.
I said them all to your face, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. We'll be back in a second to celebrate 3 years of the Infectious Groove Podcast. You're listening to the Infectious Groove Podcast on the Odd Pods Media Network.
I'm Richie, a.k.a. Midnight Agent Raw.
I'm Devin, a.k.a. Special Delivery Dev.
We're the Super Media Bros Podcast. And each week, we give a comedically informative take on movies,
Music,
television,
pro wrestling,
and much more. Check us out at supermediabrospodcast.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else that you can listen to podcasts. Shades on.
We're off.
Hey, I'm Lauren.
And I'm John.
And we host the Beard Al Podcast, the podcast where we talk about two of the greatest things in the world, beer and Weird Al.
And a lot of other things. We're funny.
Yeah, that's basically what I told him to say. Good job with your script.
Listen.
Yay! But no, seriously, we try and pair a beer with a Weird Al song and talk about both things and go where the conversation takes us. It's fun. I promise. You'll like it.
Yeah, I mean, if you like talking about random things as well as, you know, fine craft beers and some wonderful craft music.
We are back. It's Russ and Michelle, and we are here to talk about us, which is at least part of Michelle's favorite subject.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Did you bring a whole list of your favorite things that you've done on the show, or?
Not just on the show.
Oh,
My life's accomplishments.
Yeah. So since we started the show, you're going to run down like how great you are and how great you've been for everyone.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic.
And how much I do and how supportive I am.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's what I think when I think Michelle.
Yeah.
So we are actually recording this episode on the 16th of January, 2023, which happens to be the exact day that 3 years ago we sat down to record the very first episode of the Infectious Groove Podcast. And I'm sure in the early episodes we mentioned it before, but it was something I talked about forever. And nearly every time that I had ever talked to a friend or a coworker and told any sort of music story, or as you know, Michelle, you've dealt with this longer than nearly anybody in my life. Every time a song plays, I'm like, oh, do you know what that song's about? Or do you know how that guy wrote that? Or do you know what happened to that band or whatever? And
shoe shopping.
Right. Pretty much everybody except for you in my life was like, oh my God, you should really start a music podcast. Like, you know, like I would really listen to you talk about music, you know? And for the longest time, I was always just like, yeah, but why would anybody want to listen to what I have to say about music? And there were people, like I say, friends and family and everything that were like, no, really, like I would listen to that all day. But you and Kyle really were the ones that like pushed and made it happen at the, like, cause I at the time I was working on a team where I think for Christmas one year or whatever else, they got me like basically all the basics that you would need to start a podcast, like an audio interface and some microphones and stuff. And then it all just sat in the box. I was like, oh my God, that's
like
awesome.
2 years.
Yeah, I'm going to start a podcast someday. Yeah. Oh, easy sat in the box for at least a year.
Yeah.
And then,
and then you were unemployed and Kyle was unemployed. And I was like, y'all need to get a fucking hobby.
yes, that is exactly what you said. And I know we discussed this recently between the two of us, you and I didn't, because I didn't know anything about podcasts at all. I don't think I'd ever even listened to one before we started ours. And I was thinking you would put out like an episode a month or something. And like, I brought that up to you and you were like, no, you got to put out an episode every week. And I was like, huh? Like I didn't have any idea about that, like at all.
You got to keep them coming back.
Yeah. So remember when we do this show weekly, whose idea it was that we do this show weekly?
Yours.
Right.
You didn't have to agree with me.
Right. Yeah. That's what you've always told me is I don't have to agree with you. So like I say, in the very early going of the show, and we reference this all the time and people remember it quite a bit. And if you haven't listened to the album tournament that we did in the early days of the show, I would strongly recommend that you go back and check out the album tournament. It's somewhere in the middle of the first season. You'll all of a sudden see that we have 2 episodes per week back then. And the idea behind it was I picked 8 albums, Kyle picked 8 albums, and we just did kind of a bracket type thing and came to the episode every week. And, we'd have things. I remember some of the matchups vaguely. Like I remember Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd went up against like the Black Album by Metallica. And there were things like that. And then, of course, as the tournament went on, it got harder and harder and harder because you end up with things like Purple Rain going against Thriller, Rumors going against Thriller, like that type of stuff. It was really hard to have. And I think the finals ended up being Purple Rain versus Rumors, I think. But
I don't remember.
During the course of that tournament, there was an episode where Pet Sounds, universally regarded by many people to be one of the greatest records ever made, went up against, and I swear to God, I'm not being funny, I can't remember the cat's name, but there was a person who Kyle picked an album for.
Dermot Kennedy, that's right. You know why I can't remember his name? Because there was so much outrage from the audience afterwards, and people do you remember when the listeners kept making fun of his name? Like they kept coming up with like different versions of his name. And it was a trigger warning on our episode.
Yeah, and we actually had to have a trigger warning for when we were going to mention him. But anyways, during that episode, Michelle had the shock and awe of picking Dermot Kennedy over Beach Boys. And further to that point, Michelle, what was the rating that you gave Pet Sounds?
Oh, it was a good album, 5 out of 10.
Yeah, good album, 5 out of 10. Average at best.
I like the Beach Boys. It just, the two were sitting side by side, that was the whole thing, the premise of the show. If you had 2 records sitting side by side, which one would you put on? And it would be Dermot Kennedy all day.
Now, with your 5 out of 10 rating for Pet Sounds, the only thing I want to ask here on our 3rd anniversary is, has your rating changed at all? Or have you even bothered to listen to Pet Sounds again since you did that?
I'm sure I haven't listened to it again.
Okay.
I'm positive.
And so you would say that
I would say my rating has to stand. I haven't had a chance to go back into it. Yeah. So play it as it lies.
That's fair. I thought the next thing that we could go through, which is cool for me and certainly for this whole operation that we have going here, is go through some of the big names that we've, at least to me, as a shock, that we've got to speak to on this program, and maybe a couple of notes from each one, not the least of which is our friend Brian Elmquist from The Lone Bellow, who has always been very cool to us, and I thought was very, very nice of him to agree to come on the show.
Absolutely.
Do you remember? I can't remember. Didn't we have to do that interview on like a weeknight, like a Monday or Tuesday or something?
I feel like you did it.
No. You were definitely there for that one. There's a few interviews in here where I did on my own. But that one you were there for. I just remember, I'm pretty sure it was like a weeknight type thing. It was like a really odd deal. I'm
going to tell you, there's going to be like 90% of the stuff from 3 years ago that I'm not going to remember.
All right. Speaking of which, we got to speak to the Nixons early on in the program, and you were there for that one as well. But what I thought was cool about that is, when you take a band like that, I mean, hands down, the Nixons' biggest single is that song "Sister." you know, and I always feel like have tried to put the time and energy into bands' newer material when we're going to talk about them instead of just being like, you know, like, oh yeah, they did that one big song and that's it, you know. But I thought it was very cool that not only did they want to talk about their new material, but they also wanted to talk about the older songs too, you know, which I thought was really cool. One of the biggest surprises to me to get to talk to somebody on this program was, now this one I know you weren't there for, Michelle, because he was in the Philippines when I spoke to him, and I had to do the interview over Zoom, and it was like 8:00 in the morning on a Sunday.
Gross.
Our time when we did it was Arnel Pineda, the current lead singer of Journey.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy. And the biggest thing about it was that as soon as we got on, he was super, super nice. Like before I recorded the actual like interview portion of it, he apologized like 3 times he kept asking what time it was, where I was. And, you know, I was like, oh, it's fine. I'm an early riser. Don't worry about it. And he kept apologizing for making me be up so early. And I was like, no, I'm going to talk to.
Up anyways.
Yeah, I was up anyways. And I'm fine with talking to the lead singer of Journey.
Right.
Another big name that we got to talk to was Bill Champlin, of most famously of the group Chicago. And a lot of people love Peter Cetera era of Chicago. And I don't mind Chicago with Peter Cetera, but my favorite song by that band is the song Look Away, which Bill Champlin sang. So, and then in the first part of this episode, I was talking about how the song After the Love Is Gone would come back up by Earth, Wind and Fire. Not a lot of people know Bill Champlin wrote that song. And and so again, he was promoting his latest solo record at the time that I talked to him, but he was so cool and so open. Like, I mean, this guy's like a legend among music legends, and he was just so cool and so open. And at one point I said, dude, I got to ask about After the Love Is Gone. He told me a whole story about writing the song and how it ended up with Earth, Wind and Fire instead of them, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah.
And then another thing that was kind of touching was, you know, because I very much listened to his new solo record and made a lot of notes and everything. And there was a song on the album called Another Lie. And I didn't know the backstory on the song. I could just tell from the lyrics that it was a very personal thing, that like something must have happened that had been very personal to him. And I wasn't quite sure how to ask the question because I didn't want to seem like I was prying or anything, you know, but I ended up asking the question, and he was very surprised that I even picked up on how the hurt feelings in the song. And second of all, it ended up being about his son. And he told me a whole story about his son passing away from alcohol and drug abuse. And and how the lyrics of that song are all about that situation. And I was just stunned that he would even share that. You know,
right.
A big moment in the history of the show would have been the time that we got to interview Steve Gorman, the former drummer of the Black Crowes, which is one of my favorite bands ever in the history of the world. And Steve Gorman is one of my favorite members of or drummers ever. But this one for Michelle, I want to talk less about the interview and what happened afterwards. Because as you know, with what we try and do on the show, I wasn't very interested in just trying to get like quotes out of them. Like, hey, can you insult the, you know, Chris and Rich so we can, you know, get a headline out of this or anything. So I kept trying to avoid that topic. Like I just wanted to talk about, you know, his book and his drumming in the Black Crowes and whatever. And he kind of kept straying down that path. And at one point he ended up saying, here's how I know I'll never be in the same room with Chris Robinson again. And then he told this whole story about how disgusted he was with some actions from Chris Robinson. But the next day, blabbermouth.net picked up the story and ran it. And they ran the story with the quote in the headlines. Obviously, Steve Gorman says he'll never be in the same room with Chris Robinson again. And then there, plain as day on blabbermouth.net was, you know, he spoke exclusively to the Infectious Groove Podcast and said all this stuff, and it had links and stuff. So do you remember, Michelle, by any chance that afternoon when that hit and we were all looking at the podcast app and the numbers?
Yeah. And then we went to the casino to celebrate.
Did we really?
Yeah. You don't remember that?
No, I don't remember going to the casino to celebrate. But then again, we were at the casino so much at that time.
It was just another day.
Yeah. It could have just been a Monday for all I know.
It probably was.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought, I mean, it was crazy. It was like...
That's insane. Yeah, I remember it just every time we refreshed it, it was like hundreds more.
Yeah. It was like right after the story ran, I looked and it was at like 1,500 or something. And I remember either me or you being like, oh man, that'll be over like 2,000 by tomorrow. And then like before we went to bed, it was at like 20,000 or something.
Yeah.
Something like that. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Another one that was a huge moment for me was, and this is one of those things that's like, holy cow, I can't believe that happened, was getting to interview Guy Pratt, who was the bass player for Pink Floyd after Roger Waters left. First Pink Floyd live
I was there
experience.
for that one.
No, Guy, no, you were definitely not there.
Who did we talk to on the videos?
The Nixons were one of those, but the other, I have another one coming that you were definitely there for. But Guy Pratt was, he's bass player for Pink Floyd for a very long time after Roger Waters left. And and he's done a million other things too. He's played on Michael Jackson tracks. He's played on Madonna stuff. He played the bass on Addicted to Love by Robert Palmer. He's played a ton of stuff. But for me, the very first time I ever saw Pink Floyd live, this guy was playing bass. So to get to see, to get to talk to him on the show, and here's me on my little laptop and my little podcast setup, and on the webcam from London is a guy who's in Pink Floyd
Currently?
Well, Pink Floyd is no more, but the last time that they were, he was touring as their bass player. Plus, and on top of that, Nick Mason, Pink Floyd's drummer, tours, and he plays all the pre-Dark Side of the Moon Pink Floyd stuff, and Guy Pratt's playing bass with him. So kind of, yeah. Taj Jackson was another one that was stunning for me to listen to. Or to get to interview, and like I say, and listen to back to that discussion, I'm still like, wow, I can't believe that happened, and one of my favorite parts about that is a couple of things that didn't air. One of which was before we hit record, I told him that our show is very pro Michael Jackson, and I have very strong feelings about Michael Jackson being innocent. And I said, so I'm going to avoid a lot of those topics. And I thought it was very telling that he was like, no, I want to talk about as much of that as possible. Because he was like, in his reasoning was that if you don't talk about that, then the headline becomes, Jackson's avoid topic of allegations,
True.
Yeah. And he was like, I've been down that road. He's like, I don't want to do another interview where somebody skirts that. And then it looks like I told him to, and I was like, okay, cool. So we talked through all of that stuff. And then after we closed the interview, him and I talked for, another hour or so, just talking about the music industry and stuff. And at one point in the discussion that didn't air, Taj ended up saying, he said, I knew my uncle better than anybody on earth. And I really think he would have loved you. And I was just like, oh boy,
Tears.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I probably cried for a good hour after that.
Aww.
So, and I don't have any problem saying that. So the interview that you are thinking of, Michelle, and it wasn't even an interview, I actually saved this one for last just because I thought it was so cool what happened with it, is Jeff Scott Soto.
Nope, that's not the one.
Okay, well, that's the only other interview that you were on video for. I absolutely am 100% sure of this. I mean, the episodes are available.
By all the other podcasts I do.
Right, absolutely. Jeff Scott Soto, who is a legend in metal and just music in general. The guy sang with Yngwie Malmsteen. He sang with so many other huge, high-profile metal acts. He's just a legend, and he reached out to us and said, hey, I want to come on the show. And I did what we usually do, which is say, okay, well, we can keep it to 10 minutes. Whatever you're looking to promote, we can ask you questions about that. Let me know what you don't want to talk about, all that kind of stuff. And he was like, no, I've heard the show and I like the show. I want to come on a whole episode of it. And I was like, what? So
you heard our show?
Yeah.
Our show.
Yeah. Like our show right here. So here we go doing a whole episode of the show with Jeff Scott Soto just sitting in on like feedback and our jammy jams. And then the episode ended up being about, we were talking about some of the greatest love songs of all time. So he's like, I kept worrying about copyrights because like he was singing the songs, when me or you or somebody would say a song and he'd just start singing it. And I'd be like, dude, we're not trying to get in copyright trouble here,
Right.
So those are just some that I thought was awesome. I don't think I left anybody out. I literally made that list off the top of my head.
Parker Millsap.
Oh, yep. I feel awful having left that one out because and that came from Twitter. That just came. He was part of our Jammy Jams, probably yours, one week, and we tagged him in the episode, and he literally replied on Twitter and was like, because our episode was about what a big year 1991 was. And he was like, I wasn't even born in 1991.
Yeah.
Why am I tagged in this episode? And I was like, oh, well, because, we listen to you a lot. We'd love to talk to you. And he was like, oh, okay. And I think it took like a month to work that out.
I think we kind of thought he was blowing us off at one point.
No, I think his people were blowing us off at one point.
I don't mean like we were talking to him, but yeah.
But he wanted to do it. And his publicist just stopped replying to us. And the only reason it got to happen was because Parker initially emailed us from his personal email. So when I went directly back to him, he was like, yeah, why haven't we done that yet? And I was like, right, because your people are not caring about getting you on the show. So yeah, that was really cool to get to talk to him as well. I have a list of things that I want to talk about that are some of my favorite things that have happened because of and about this show. And I'm not doing this for comedic effect, but I'm going to ask you, Michelle, first, if you have anything you'd like to mention as your favorite things about the show, or
it's like Oprah's favorite, or no, is it Ellen's favorite things?
Whose favorite things?
Ellen's? Isn't it Ellen's?
No, I think
things?
it's Oprah's, but
I think it's Oprah's.
Yeah,
Oprah's favorite things.
But yeah, so do you have some things that have been your favorite things that have happened, or things you like about the show, or things that happened because of the show?
I like that we currently have no less than 5 male downstairs grooming kits.
Oh, right.
In my bathroom.
Sure.
Yep, from when we were sponsored by that one company, which has nothing to do with the show really, but I don't know. I think that I've learned a lot.
That's debatable. I think that you might have learned a lot in the moment, but have you retained a lot is the question.
We should do a quiz show.
Well, I can tell you how that's going to go.
I'm pretty smart.
You're going to start out asking how many passes you get?
I'm going to go back and listen to every episode. I think for me, it's just enjoyable to do something with my time that's not sit on the couch. And so like, it's something to look forward to. And I think that it's something that's fun that we can discuss, and we have a really good rapport. And so I really enjoy just, I've enjoyed the ride.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So
I don't really have like a lot of interviews I wasn't there for, but I do enjoy listening to them because I think that was an exciting period in our time for us. And,
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's funny with those interviews and stuff too. Some of it was like, good thing I was unemployed at the time. Cause like they'd just be like, hey, we can do this day at this time. And that's it,
Yeah. I think a lot of it wouldn't have, I think none of it would have happened as well as it did if everyone was employed and stayed employed.
Yeah.
It really gave us momentum to keep going, especially when the world turned to shit. I feel like it was definitely something that kept us all on track and something to look forward to. So, I mean, in general, I think it was just a good experience.
For sure. The things that I have on here, and Michelle, you tell me if you agree or disagree with any of this. The fact that our friendship, like you and I's friendship, has made other people feel like they're our friends, I think is really cool.
I don't have any other friends.
No, I know, but people.
I don't need any other friends.
I know, but people act like they're our friends.
Oh.
You know what
I'm
saying?
Sit with us.
I
know what you're saying.
Yeah, you can't sit with us. But yeah, that's been a big plus for me.
I do like when people say that they talk to us through their car and they yell at us. And,
we get that a lot.
Yeah. That they feel like they're included and that we're just sitting in the room with them. I think that's really cool. And I don't think that I've really experienced that in my podcast listening. I do listen to quite a few.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's pretty awesome that we can do that.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like that's one of the things, like the Itch said, like it makes us feel like we're, I don't know, at the risk of tooting our own horns, cut above. I like that people get us in general and they get what we're trying to do. Like I've told you before, Michelle, personally, like sitting in public way before the podcast, I've told you that you and I have such a rapport and we find the dumbest things so funny that I feel like people in public would listen in on us and be like, God, those two are idiots.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So the fact that like we've cultivated an audience of people that
also think we're idiots.
Yeah, no, that get what we're doing. and people who understand that there's a lot more currency in doing what we do, underrated and overlooked, and that, and building stuff up instead of just constantly doing, we got a hot take about this, we're going to crap on this thing that you love.
Yeah, I do that enough in my free time. I don't need to do that here.
Right. Another thing that I've loved about the show is listening to a ton of stuff that I normally probably wouldn't have, either through Kyle's album picks or your album picks, or definitely the crowd album picks that we've had.
Yeah, I think that goes along with learning.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't say you've enjoyed much of anything that you've heard that you.
I was gonna say I can't relate. I don't know that I've picked up a lot from other people. I'm very stubborn, but
you've tried.
That's it. I've learned how to be a good sport, right?
Right.
Am I a good sport?
Yes. Another thing that I like is the Odd Pods media family that we've become a part of. And this is going to be a loaded statement, but most of the podcast community that we've interacted with, I know, Michelle, you haven't had much to do with the promoting of the show and whatnot, but I am here to tell you that the podcast community, at least on Twitter, is extremely clicky and very much a high school experience to some extent. But I will say that for me, it's as I get older, it's the, situations are what you make of them. And if somebody upsets you, to just not look at them again is really the best way to go about that. So I will say that most of the podcast community that we've interacted with has been really awesome and really supportive. So that's been great. Another thing too that I love about the show, and this is probably going to be the last thing that I list, but the loyal listeners that we have. I mean, I rarely look at our numbers anymore for anything. Is when you start a podcast, you look at your numbers every 2 seconds. It's a watching a pot waiting for it to boil, you just look at your numbers all the time. I rarely look at our numbers at all ever, but I looked the other day and saw that we average 1,600 downloads every 30 days or so, which is awesome. That's all. That's a lot of people regularly listening to what we do here. And
I don't even know that many people.
That's true. And, we have people that have joined our Patreon, and people that, when we started the YouTube channel, that went over there to subscribe, and people that, religiously comment on our Facebook or interact with us on Twitter and everything.
Leave us voicemails.
Yeah, leave us voicemails. I think it's awesome that, people also want to see good in the world and want to support what we're doing about trying to put more good out into the world. So I think that's cool.
I think that we wouldn't be who we are today without the interaction between just regular people. I feel like it would be like we were talking to a void. So the people who interact with us definitely have shaped and created the show too.
Oh, no, I totally agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. Because like you said, we wouldn't even reference running jokes and whatnot, because we'd be the only people laughing at something that we already laughed at.
You and I do that anyways.
No, I know we do that.
Other people.
Right. Yeah. Just not in front of other people. Having said that, this episode that you're listening to right now is the last episode of season 7 of the Infectious Groove Podcast. And we always take a 2-week break. And then after that, we kick off and go through the next season. Now is as good a time as any to let everyone know that it's pretty much been a decision made by all of us here that season 8 of the Infectious Groove Podcast is going to be our last season. That is a decision that was made solely by Michelle. It is her fault. No one else agreed to this. I think that even if everyone quit and you wanted to keep it going, you would have found a way. No. And I will say, so just so everyone is clear, we are going to take a 2-week break after this episode that you're hearing now. We will come back. You're going to get 15 more episodes, which will take you all the way through till May of this show, which is awesome. And Michelle will be on every other one of those episodes, maybe a few more. We'll see what we can get her to do. Currently,
I'm trying to work Kyle into some of them too, so he should be back at least for a couple episodes in last season.
Nice. Currently, we have 3 new YouTube videos that go up every single week. So our current output right now is a new episode of the podcast on Mondays, and then a new YouTube video on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday every week. Nothing is going to change as far as the YouTube channel goes. We will still have those 3 videos every week on the YouTube channel, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. But the program itself, the podcast itself, in this form, with us putting out a for sure episode, every week and doing the seasons and all that stuff. If I'm being honest, it's entirely too much to keep up with, between all the time and energy that has to be put into producing the show. And then it's not just that, like Michelle said, you can't just put it out and then you just hope people find it. You gotta promote every single episode a ton on all social media, and, between scheduling and recording and social media and editing and life and everything, it's just entirely too much to do all of that. So this is something I brought to Kyle and Michelle, and they were like, yeah, that's, that works for us. And so, I have no doubt in my mind something or other will happen where we'll, I don't know, every couple of months put out an episode for funsies or something, or I'll put out an episode if, something happens.
It's see you later, not goodbye.
Yeah, for sure. And another thing too is, by the time we finish that season, there will be 175 episodes of this show, on average an hour long, so
shit.
That's a lot of time and energy. And that's just the minutes that it's out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's before you worry about all the time and energy put into making all that happen. So if anybody ever has any, hankering to hear more of us or whatever else, just go back to the top and start it over like you do with The Office or Scrubs or, Parks and Rec or whatever. So having said that, this has been a very fun ride. And again, I don't mean to make it sound like this is the last episode. I'm just making it clear that this is the news that we're delivering to everybody now. When we come back in 2 weeks and we open up our next season, we will have Garrett from the Ever Trending Story podcast, who was a lot of fun last time he was on, is going to open the season with us to talk about mixtapes and mixed CDs. And I guess, Michelle, would you put like playlists into that too? Like, I don't know, do people make playlists for each other like they used to do mixtapes and CDs or no? I know a lot of people like share playlists, but I don't know if anybody goes, oh, I made this playlist for you.
I don't know. I'm an old now.
Yeah, so
I'm
am I.
not really sure.
Well, you know what? Let's save it for the discussion. We'll put that in the discussion. Like, hey, would you count that the same?
I will take a survey of the young folks at my job.
Oh, thank you. Man on the
Survey
street.
says?
Man on the street survey. That'd be great. So anyways, Michelle, before we end this season and go into our very last, do you have any parting words of wisdom or anything you'd like to share with everybody?
Why are you putting me on the spot?
Do you remember last week when I was like, hey, this is what we're going to do for our
and then I
next
said,
episode?
don't prepare me.
And that, yeah. So I didn't.
Go forth and prosper.
Go forth and prosper. And like we always say about this time, without music, life would be a mistake. Bye.
Bye. The Infectious Groove Podcast is hosted by Russ Robinson, Kyle Wimple, and Michelle Kasalecki. Produced and edited by Russ Robinson. Intro and outro music composed by Chris Kimmel. Recorded with a Rode Podcaster Pro and Rode Pod mic.